Welcome to Momentum for Change, Voices of the Missouri Movement. This is a monthly podcast produced by your coalition, and I am your host, Nora Mosby, a member services specialist at the Missouri Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence. We hope that you enjoy this conversation coming to you directly from Voices of the Missouri Movement. Some episodes of Momentum for Change have conversations that include content and descriptions of domestic and sexual violence, which may be alarming or activating for some listeners. Please take care and visit the MOCADSP website or call our office to connect with supportive services. Hello, and welcome to episode 11 of season 3 of Momentum for Change. This is your host, Nora Mosby, and Momentum for Change is a monthly podcast hosted by the Missouri Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence to lift up voices of the Missouri movement. November is a very busy month here at the Coalition, and among other things, Veterans Day is right around the corner. So in recognition of Veterans Day, we wanted to take a look at how service members in particular are impacted by the issues of domestic and sexual violence. And we wanted to explore what resources are available to people who are currently listed and to veterans who have also experienced domestic and sexual violence. So I'm very happy to say that we are joined today by our members from Welcome Home, Jess Asher and Michelle Vogt. Jess and Michelle, thank you so much for being here. I am really looking forward to our discussion today. So as we're getting started, good morning. As we are getting started, Jess and Michelle, could you just introduce yourself to our members and let our listeners and let people know a little bit about what you do?
Sure. My name is Michelle Vogt, and I am the development director at Welcome Home. That basically means I do all the marketing, social media, plan events, work with other third-party groups who have events and they want some help getting started. Sometimes people don't even know how to plan an event. So we'll help with golf tournaments. We've got several events that we put on throughout the year. Our goal is to raise 40% of our budget through private donations. So that's what we do, is work on raising awareness and really focus on what our case managers are doing in-house, for the positive outcomes we have and what we're doing for veterans. We service 26 surrounding counties. So we do a lot of work, not just in Boone County.
Awesome. Those development skills are always just invaluable. So thank you for your work in building the organization. I know it's really important. Jess, would you like to go next?
Absolutely. I'm Jess Asher. I'm the service and outreach coordinator for Welcome Home. I kind of wear two specific and very different hats. The service part allows me to interact with our veterans for employment services, as well as compile a lot of data and compliance things, all of those grant metrics and audits and making sure that we are the best organization that we can, looking at those policies and just providing the best services that we can. The other part of my job is kind of the opposite of Michelle's. I want to go and find our homeless veterans. I am all about meeting every service provider that I absolutely can, and I cover all 26 counties. There's no place I won't go, and no organization I'm not willing to walk into. But my main goal there is to get my information into that homeless veteran's hands.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear about. We have some data nerds amongst our listeners too, and who are very passionate about numbers as well. So great to have that perspective on the call today, Jess.
Spreadsheets rule the world. Yeah.
Speaking of numbers, you all cover 26 counties, which is a huge service area. And I would imagine that you all provide a lot of services throughout that huge service area. For anybody who's not familiar with your work at Welcome Home, what is it that you all do? What services do you provide?
So one of my favorite responses to that question, Nora, is we are not only just a shelter. We are trying to stop the recidivism of homelessness by helping those who may be at risk of losing their home or apartment, which that's where the permanent housing program piece comes into play. As you know, once they've been evicted, they're homeless. It's so much more difficult. A lot of times takes up to 6 to 10 months to find more housing. We want to keep them in the home that they have. So that's one of the number one things I like to tell people about Welcome Home is we are not just a shelter. We want to help those before they become homeless.
Awesome. So you offer a safe place to stay, but also have services and programming around maintaining that stable housing.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
what is the population of people that you all provide services to?
The full spectrum. Age, race, gender, family status, economic status. If there is a box you can check, we hit them. 26 counties in mid-Missouri covers a very wide swath of land and a very interesting demographic changes. Most organizations in Missouri only cover the metropolitan areas. So St. Louis, Kansas City, and Springfield, those agencies might only cover 3, 4, 5, 6 counties. Now, their numbers are going to be much higher than ours because they're metropolitan, but they have kind of the same demographic as we have very rural counties where housing is very difficult to come by and trying to find more mom and pop type landlords as opposed to being in Columbia or Jeff City, where you have more management companies that are less likely to have a face that I can talk to.
I see. I see. Um, so I think it's so interesting that you spoke to providing services in rural counties. What are some of the unique challenges that you're seeing people who are experiencing homeless deal with in rural communities?
Lack of recognition, excuse me, lack of recognition
Yeah.
that they even exist. Um, Again, there are some counties in our catchment that there's no population in a town that goes over a couple thousand, and they don't recognize as a whole that there could be homeless veterans there. Now, generally speaking, people are going to go where the resources are, and
Mm-hmm.
that is Jeff City and Columbia. This is where all the hospitals are, and especially for veterans, right? Our VA is located here in Columbia, and we have one of the best VAs in the entire country. Yeah, we are in the right spot.
Mm-hmm. So you all are a
But
nonprofit organization. Oh, go ahead, Jess. Sorry about that.
sorry, no, I was going to say part of Welcome Home's housing philosophy follows the housing first model, which is a low no barrier emphasis in coming in. We do not require things like sobriety or income. Um, and since we cover 26 counties, where you want to be is also very important. If you have substance abuse issues and this is where your community is, it might be better for you to move out of this area. And we have the capacity to do that.
You all are bringing up so many great issues that I am just thrilled that you are mentioning. I'm so glad that you are talking about housing first. That's really exciting. What are your thoughts on housing first? And are you seeing any kind of positive outcomes from the housing first approach?
Absolutely. I mean, so many things with homelessness and domestic violence issues kind of feed into each other, right? If we have an excess of unemployment and lack of income, if we have no housing stability, how do I take any step in a forward direction? If I don't know where my things are going to be safe, if I'm going to be safe, where am I going to sleep? I can't possibly be expected to solve any problem, right? But as soon as you come through our door, I can take one thing off your plate. You are safe. You have a place to stay. You have a place to watch your stuff. Your stuff is going to be secure, right? And we can start chipping away at those other issues that you may have. But that shelter part, what can't you do if you
Mm-hmm.
don't know where you're going to be tonight? You know,
Yes.
safety and security, yeah, is 100% probably the most important thing our folks are looking for. just to be able to sleep and know that they won't be bothered.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In a clean, safe environment that will provide the supportive services they need. We provide 3 warm, nutritious meals a day. We are called Welcome Home for a reason. We want to give them back that stability and strength that sadly people have taken away from them.
Uh-huh. So it is a very welcoming approach. I love that so much. So could you talk a little bit about the history of the organization? How long have you been around? What gap were you trying to fill when you were founded?
Sure. We were founded in 1992 by 3. One of my favorite quotes is "One person can make a difference, and everyone should try." And
Mm-hmm.
these 3 Vietnam veterans lost a buddy on the street due to the elements, and decided we're not going to do that. If they want to be housed, we're going to do that. They each got a second mortgage on their homes, and they bought a small place up off of Range Line that we were able to house 9 to 10 people. And I think that was maybe 1 or 2 on the couch. I've never seen the inside of this facility. It did exactly what we needed it to do then. But as things started to evolve, our founders and really our very, very sharp case managers were like, hey, what else can we be doing? And that's where the permanent housing piece came to play, the employment services. We're really trying to, again, stop that cycle. So in 2017, we were able to move into our 25,000 square foot facility. It is a 34 bed, 32 room facility, commercial
Wow.
kitchen, computer lab, big common room, laundry facilities. Our admin staff, we've sort of outgrown the space. That happens. But we are proud to say we moved in that facility debt free in 2017 from a
Well,
very
that's huge.
successful.
Mm-hmm.
It was huge. And truly, I was not involved in 2017. I've been here going on 7 years. I came in right after. Fell in love with the mission and the team and everything that our founders started Welcome Home with. And all of us through the years have just built on that. And it's going to sound kind of silly, Nora, but I feel like we've built sort of a home.
Mm-hmm.
I know we're like a home. And we do whatever we can do to help each individual. Every single person has a different need.
As you all are talking about the services at Almost Home, I can hear the passion in your voices. I can hear that this is an issue you care deeply about in an organization and people that you care deeply about. Can you all speak to where that passion comes from? Is it from life experience, or where does your passion for serving veterans come from?
Well, I grew up in Boone County, all over Boone County, and I was certainly impacted by the events of September 11th.
Mm-hmm.
And after I was of age, I joined the military myself. So I am a veteran.
Oh.
When I come to work, I'm not working with veterans. I'm working with my brothers and sisters. And part of my passion comes from not knowing about Welcome Home before I started working here, not knowing that homeless services existed for veterans, how to obtain them. I wouldn't have even known to ask. So it's imperative that I get that information and spread it as wide and as far as I can, because if I can help one person, my job is done.
Yes, yes, I love that. Michelle, would you want to add anything to that?
Yes, I was born and raised here myself as well. I am not a veteran, but I came from a very large family of veterans on both sides of my mom and dad's family. Both my grandparents or grandfathers were in World War II. I had an uncle who was in Vietnam. I have several cousins who are still serving. So it's my passion just comes from the fact that these guys and gals, I get to do fun things. I get to walk around and go to lunch, and I get to do all of the things that we all do here in America because there are people who sign on that dotted line to protect us.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I'm thankful every day that I found this is sort of my second career in life, and I I really it fills up my cup. I feel like I am finally in a place where I can give back, and I can
Mm-hmm.
give back to those who are very deserving of everything that we can do for them.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for sharing that insight. I love hearing origin stories, and I can tell that you all just care deeply about supporting veterans. And so cool to hear that, yes, this is what you do for work, but this is an issue that has touched your lives and your family for quite a while now. So thanks for sharing that. Many of our listeners work in the anti violence movement and are very aware of the connection that exists between experiencing homelessness and domestic and sexual violence. A lot of times, when a survivor experiences domestic violence, they are no longer safe in their home and they have to leave their home. But can you help us understand the connection between, and that is one of many reasons why that happens, but can you help us understand the connection between um, military service or being a veteran and experiencing homelessness? What is that? Can you thread that needle for us?
Sure.
So, research shows that veterans are up to 50% more likely to experience homelessness. That comes from the National Institute of Health, the VA, as well as the National Alliance to End Homelessness. Those are three fairly reputable sources that say up to 50% of veterans have a 50% increase in chance of being homeless or experiencing homelessness. Uh, there has been a 7% increase in veteran homelessness in this last year. A lot of that plays into lack of economic resources and housing instability. We don't have a homelessness problem. We have a housing problem.
Mm,
If there was a cure, it would be a million houses built tomorrow. However, it's experiencing those other things as a veteran, such as PTSD, mental health issues, which may or may not lead into substance abuse issues, kind of feed into that. Sorry, my
No, you're
mind
fine.
went completely blank.
Feed into like this cycle.
Feeds into that cycle,
mhm.
and having gone through the military myself and coming out, there's lots of folks that don't want to seek any sort of services from the military or military adjacent. They are done with that. There's lots of people that don't know they qualify for services. Fleeing domestic violence and being a survivor of sexual violence, military related or not, should qualify you for a whole lot more services than you think that you probably are can receive. Does
That
that
is
answer the
such,
question?
yes, those are such important points. I love when you said that this is a result of the housing crisis, that there's just not enough affordable housing, and it's impacting everyone in the state of Missouri, everyone in the country, but absolutely also impacting veterans. And there's such a housing shortage and lack of not only housing, but a lack of affordable housing. And yeah, it's really impacting people in very, very real ways. So thanks for speaking to that. As we were talking about your services, um, I know that if you're serving people, you are serving survivors of domestic and sexual violence. That is just how prevalent these issues are. So, can you talk about how issues around experiencing domestic and sexual violence also uh, impact the veterans that you are providing services to?
Safety and security is going to be the number one thing. The reasons why people don't report in the military or in civilian world are the same. There's very few differences there.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, can you ask the question one more time?
Yeah, just some of the dynamics of domestic and sexual violence that you're seeing with the veterans that you're serving. Like, how do those two issues intersect? Are you seeing a lot of survivors that you're serving having also experienced domestic and sexual violence? Or is it something that you're not seeing very much of?
Not a whole lot, but I would say when we are working with a female client, the chances are much, much higher.
Absolutely.
That being said, military sexual trauma is just as prevalent in men, if not more so than it is in women.
Mm-hmm.
However, as a veteran and survivor myself, I don't know of many female veterans that are not at least 1 degree separated from some sort of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
That is sort of the blessing and the curse of being a unit and being right, being with your people. Is you being in the military is a very different job. Me and
Mm-hmm.
Michelle and you, Miss Nora, we get to go home tonight,
Mm-hmm.
right? We might have to work a random weekend or get called in for something, but generally speaking, we work 9 to 5, Monday through
Mm-hmm.
Friday. When you're in the military, that's 365, 24/7. They can call you at any time for any reason. You don't get to go home. And so
Wow.
when you're living with these same people that you may have experienced trauma with or
Hmm.
from, that creates a very different dynamic. If me and
Yes.
Michelle have an issue, we get to separate, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have different areas. This might be the person I work with and live with. And
Mm-hmm.
that creates a whole different situation around safety and security.
Yes. That is such an important point that I had not thought about.
Welcome Home was very intention driven when creating our shelter and that it be as much trauma informed as possible. Everyone has their own key card. You cannot go into any other rooms. The hallways are locked. So you are secluded to your own hallway, right? There are locks on top of locks on top of locks. While
Mm-hmm.
we may not be as secure as a DV shelter, we are pretty Fort Knox.
I can definitely speak to that for sure.
Right. Obviously, we're also clinical and HIPAA driven. You call and you ask for someone. We're not going to tell you anybody's there. We are going to create as many safety barriers for you as possible. Now, while
Uh-huh.
we are not experts at DV and SV, we're going to make those appropriate referrals and getting those referrals to those people who are experts has been the best for
Mm-hmm.
us. We have 3 licensed clinical social workers on staff, which is huge for an agency as small as we are.
Mm-hmm.
However, our expertise is veteran homelessness. And social
Mm-hmm.
workers know, right, we're going to give you to the best possible resource for you.
Mm-hmm.
We can get you housed, and we're going to keep you safe.
That's
You
great. I mean,
know,
yeah, I love that approach to services. Like, how can we connect survivors? How can we connect service members with as many services that are available in a community by partnering with other similarly aligned social service organizations, such as domestic and sexual violence service providers, and wrapping survivors in those kinds of services is so important. I agree. You spoke to some of the dynamics that exist for service members who are experiencing domestic and sexual violence or who have a history of trauma. Is there, and I think those are really important points. Like, I had never thought about that issue of working 365 days a year with people who you live with, who you might have also experienced trauma like that. It's a whole other layer of safety planning. But are there any other dynamics that you think civilians might not be aware of if they haven't worked in the military or served in the military?
I think a lot of people struggle to understand how deep those connections can really be.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to be someone that you served with. And I see
Mm-hmm.
it all of the time watching the community at the shelter, right? These folks kind of slip back into something that is comfortable for them because military is so ingrained. All of that training is so ingrained that there is a comfort in it. And when you have these people who have this connection, they have this one thing in common, but it's a huge thing, there
Mm-hmm.
is comfort there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do case management anymore, but when I did, I always felt like I had a bit of a cheat code
Mm-hmm.
because I could talk to you on a level that maybe someone else could. I,
Mm-hmm.
I know and understand something about you inherently into my core that others who did not experience that cannot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's so important. I was also
So
thinking
those
about,
connections, I was going to say those battle buddies is what they're called, and it's a cheesy, corny phrase. And it's day one in boot camp, you're like, battle buddy is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Fast forward 20 years, fast forward 30 years. That's
Mhm.
our language. This is my battle buddy right here, right? We're gonna go through it together. And I know if I'm calling you my battle buddy, that I can rely on you.
Yes,
It's a
absolutely.
cheat code.
Well, good to know about that. I was also thinking about when it comes to domestic violence, do you all see an issue around the abusive partner is a service member and maybe their spouse is connected to the military and to all that's involved in military service as a spouse? Like, can you speak to anything about being in an abusive relationship and your spouse is the one serving?
I can't, honestly. I am not
Yeah,
sure what the resources for spouses are. I
yeah,
can
I know.
speak to, yeah, it's generally going to surround the survivor. I know that there are
Yeah.
safety things in place. I know what the military to military level of that is. I am not sure if, as you said, the spouse is the veteran and the victim is not what they apply for or what they qualify for.
Yeah, and I know that's a little bit outside of your wheelhouse as a veteran, but it's just where my mind went, is wondering what kind of resources were out there for that. I would like, though, to address the same question for sexual violence in particular. What are some of the dynamics that you're seeing within your services for people who have served in the military and also experienced sexual violence?
What they're able to do is, even if they don't necessarily qualify for health services as a whole, and there's a million reasons why that might be, right? They should qualify for mental health services for MST, military sexual trauma. And with that should come therapy and all of those things, but as well as a possible service connection, and that is disability income that will certainly help them taking those next steps. I have seen lots of folks in my 6 years have an increase in service connection that was surrounding MST. It is probably the most successful rating increase is with MST and sexual violence. The military is very forward in that. While you are in the military, they have something called SHARPS training, and that is sexual harassment and assault response and prevention. Any of your
Mm-hmm.
NCOs and sergeants, they're going to do that quarterly training, right? There's going to be a SHARP sergeant in your unit. That's a person that you can report to, and they can provide victim advocacy and start the process of investigation.
So, are there resources available in the military for someone who experiences sexual violence and wants to report internally? What does that look like?
There absolutely is. Whoever your sharps sergeant is, if that for some reason is in your chain of command and would cause an issue, there's someone in your unit that you should be able to contact. There's a chain of command, but you can go over it if that lower person is the cause of the issue. Again, they're just going to work on separating those people if there's however that worked, and um, providing as much support for the survivor as possible.
So, you mentioned some medical resources for somebody who does want to make a report. What does the kind of investigation or maybe criminal justice process look like internally within the military? What kind of resources are there?
I would say it's probably one of your main reasons that people do not report because it is
Mm-hmm.
a process.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the same in the civilian world, right? If you file a report, nothing is immediate. And that
Yeah.
process, however drawn out that might be, is might not be so encouraging.
Yeah.
I do know that, especially when I was in, and I recently spoke with a retired staff sergeant, and it's still the same. It is known that sexual assault is 30 years in military prison and rape is life.
Wait, say that again.
The Uniform
How can
Code of
that be?
Military Justice. How can that be? Yes. So when you are charged in the military for military crimes, that supersedes all civilian things. You are charged by a military court under military law. That is called
Mhm.
UCMJ, Uniform Code of Military Justice, which tells you everything from how you should dress, how you should walk and eat, to how to support your soldiers during these situations. The charge for sexual assault carries a 30-year sentence, and rape carries a life sentence in
Wow.
military prison.
I
Wow.
can't speak to this, but I have to believe that military prison,
It's a bit worse. It's a bit worse
I don't know, right?
because you are still considered, you are still under some of the same restrictions of being in the military. You are
Yeah.
only not only in prison and not free, you are military, not free.
Yeah.
Wow.
You
So
know,
do you?
and I have to believe that compared to civilian um, punishments,
Mhm.
I would be very I would hope that that leads people in different directions.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering, do you think that those strong sentences impact rates of sexual violence or the perpetration of sexual violence, or does it impact survivors' willingness to come forward? Have you seen either one of those dynamics play out?
I don't know, to be very
Mhm.
honest. Again, I would hope. I love my military, but I love my boss, right? I love my
Yeah.
supervisor. Not everybody has as great a supervisor as I do. Not everybody had as great as NCO as I did. So the human element is going to change everything.
Mhm. Yeah, it really does. You all mentioned a lot of the dynamics of domestic and sexual violence and some of the services available for when it happens in the military. Is there anything else you wanted to say about that connection or that overlap?
I don't think so. The emphasis should always be that even if you don't want to report to see the other person held accountable, which is
Mm-hmm.
absolutely your right, and there's a million reasons why you wouldn't want to do that, you are
Mm-hmm.
still eligible for those services.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of you wanting to press charges or seek anything further down that road, you are still eligible and should qualify for those health services so that you can try and recover from that trauma.
Many of our listeners work at local domestic and sexual violence advocacy programs providing direct services to survivors. If they're working with a survivor who does have a history of military service, do you have any resources or thoughts that you would encourage those advocates to connect survivors with in terms of services or just any recommendations
Give us
for
a call.
advocates?
Give us a call.
Yes.
You can, if you call our main number and you can ask to speak with Jess Asher. I am
Mm-hmm.
always happy to answer any and all questions that you have. If you have a client in your office that is saying that they are a veteran, I can tell you pretty quick what they qualify for, and really provide those resources to you. There are
Mm-hmm.
so many idiosyncrasies, and I can look at 10 different veterans and 10 different forums, and they can all say the same thing, and there'll be 10 different stories, right?
Yeah.
It's all
Yeah.
individualized. So it's very hard to give you general rules on who qualifies for what because it's very wide open. And as soon as you add homelessness and domestic violence into the situation, you qualify for a few more things.
Uh,
Even especially welcome home. I can speak for welcome home. While on
mhm.
paper you may make a little bit more money and may not qualify on an income level, we're still going to help you because you're fleeing
Mhm.
domestic violence. And we work to honor veterans and restore lives. That's our mission. And as corny as it may sound, that is how we live and make every decision possible for our veterans. How can I restore your life and honor you?
That's really helpful to hear. And would you want a survivor to call you directly, or is it better for an advocate to call you directly to get connected with those resources?
I would say it's better for an advocate to call me, but they
Okay.
are welcome to call me.
Mm-hmm.
I can do screeners or at least refer you to the appropriate person. We have several different programs, so one might be more appropriate than the other. But if you've seen my face and I am a comfortable person that you would like to talk to, I will talk to anyone, my friends.
Well, I also wanted to pick back up on some of those.
I'll point you in the right direction at the very least. If it's
I know you will, Jess. I know
me
you
and
will.
us,
You all mentioned that you all do connect people who are staying in your residential services with behavioral health services. And so I wanted to talk about that a little bit more because you also mentioned being really focused on providing trauma informed services. So when we think about the issue of PTSD, honestly, military service is one of the first things that comes to mind. Post traumatic stress disorder is often something we think about of people who have served in active military service in war settings and come back with trauma because of that exposure. But we also know that people who experience domestic and sexual violence often experience PTSD as a result of that trauma. And you all are probably working at the intersection of both of those issues, providing therapeutic services to people who are experiencing PTSD because of military service and also because of interpersonal violence. And so, can you talk about what kind of treatments are available from the therapeutic side of things and what addressing those complexities looks like?
so we can provide referrals to the VA for sure for mental health services. We
Mm-hmm.
do not provide any sort of therapy or medical services in house.
Mm-hmm.
If you do not happen to qualify for VA healthcare, and there are folks who do not have to be VA healthcare to receive our services, like I said, our scope is so much wider than whether or not you qualify for the VA. We can refer you to Burrell and Compass. I think we constantly, as a clinical team, are going through trainings, especially with military cultural competency being invoked as well. So having a general understanding of why someone might react the way that they are
Mm-hmm.
and learning how to give grace, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's sometimes be a learned thing and having just giving folks a safe space.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. It certainly speaks to the need for trauma informed services. And so it's really great to hear that that's priority for you all. Jess, you
We do
mentioned that
have
you,
harm reduction. Oh, I was going to say,
oh,
sorry. We do have harm reduction groups happen in house as well with the VA provider so that they can have kind of a meet and greet. I think they hold each other accountable for things,
mm-hmm.
and it gives them a safe space kind of in house still with veterans and with their brothers and sisters to understand things like NA and AA, whereas it might be civilians, right? We can hold each other accountable in house. We live with each other, and it's been a very interesting addition we've had this last year that has gone really really well.
Huh.
It speaks to
That's,
that battle buddy camaraderie
It
thing.
absolutely does,
mm-hmm.
and it harm reduction, right? I don't. If you come into my office tomorrow and you say, Jess, man, I fell off the wagon hard last night, I'm going to look at
Mm-hmm.
you and I'm going to thank you, and that's as far as the conversation's going to go,
Mm-hmm.
right? That battle buddy might prod you a little bit more. Hey man, maybe have 2 drinks tonight, right?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
okay with 2 drinks instead of 5 you had. That's harm reduction.
Yes. So, for maybe
Right?
listeners who
And
aren't familiar with the harm reduction approach, how would you describe harm reduction in a nutshell?
harm reduction is not the complete abstinence of the thing that is causing a negative behavior or is
Mm-hmm.
perceived as a negative behavior. It is simply taking steps to to create a more healthier lifestyle. Complete sobriety might not be your goal, but if I'm having a drinking problem and I see that I have a drinking problem, I can take steps to try to work and bust that down, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to complete abstinence, which works very well for some,
Mm-hmm.
but not all.
Yes. It's a realistic approach, I think.
Mhm.
That's so cool to hear about. You also mentioned that you do some employment advocacy, connecting veterans with employment. Can you talk a little bit more about that and maybe what some of the barriers to employment you're seeing veterans experience?
Sure.
Absolutely. I think so in-house, we're gonna help wrap you around. And again, it's all about choice. I'm not here to throw you into a random job. I'm here
Mm-hmm.
to find you what's gonna fill your cup, right? And whatever that looks like, it's all very individualized. Luckily, we also, because again, we're in the same town as Harry S. Truman, they have vocational rehabilitation services. And that is probably one of the better fits for our folks because it works very well with their appointments. Once they're safe, now they can start taking care of those other issues. It's very hard to have a job in a million appointments. So some of those services work very well with each other and can kind of graduate into full-time employment. I can help you with resumes and job searches and interview skills and some of those soft skills and really help you hit the ground running. But Voc Rehab is going to take care of some of those more complicated issues that you may have. Um, and again, place you where you will have the most success.
Mm-hmm. I can really appreciate
And
too what you said about. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Michelle.
no, I was just going to tack on to that. One of the things
Mm-hmm.
that we've also done and will do for any veteran and their family members, really, homeless people have a hard time. They don't have an outfit to wear to an
Mm-hmm.
interview. Maybe they don't have a
Mm-hmm.
suit. Maybe they don't have. We have resources, abundant resources to help them get a suit if they need a suit. If they need a pair of cargo pants because they're going to go paint, whatever it is, the resources are available for us to make that connection.
Yes, those are such important things. I totally agree. Um, and I really, Jess, when you were talking about finding jobs that fill someone's cup, it sounds like you're really focused on realistic approaches that sustain success. And so finding a meaningful employment that someone is going to stick with in the long run and not just leave right away because it's not a good fit. I think that's such an important part that we often miss when people are just looking for any old job.
And
So
sometimes
y'all,
that is okay.
yeah.
Sometimes people do just need a very quick job, and there are lots of stores and places that will do that.
Mm-hmm.
And when they're ready to look for something different, I'm there to help.
Yes, that's wonderful. Well, you all might be aware that October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And many anti violence organizations throughout the state of Missouri have been active, shining a light on domestic violence and really raising awareness of the issue through local events and just awareness walks and many different. And we lit up the town purple across the state of Missouri, and purple is the color of Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And so, as you all think about your own work, I was just wondering, is there anything that you wish there was more awareness of when it comes to uh, survivors of domestic and sexual violence who have served in the military?
Obviously, I'm a little biased to this situation. Working with veterans and being a veteran myself, if there's someone who deserves to be safe after putting themselves in a very unsafe potential position, having been in the military, it's veterans.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of folks that we serve. We talk about volunteering, and we generally have an all volunteer military, but there are folks that served that did not choose to do so. And there are definitely some extra layers of trauma with that. We still have a very robust Vietnam veteran community and still being aware of those issues. They never went away. These are
Wow.
folks that did not get a good welcome home like some military members do today, right? We've all
Mm-hmm.
seen the beautiful videos of families being reunited. We've all cried our eyes out. There's nothing more pure. Some of these men and women did not get that. And in fact, might have received the very opposite of it.
Mm-hmm.
There
Yeah.
are definitely some flavors of ideas and some assumptions about homeless populations. There's assumptions about veterans, and there's assumptions about survivors.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, we don't know anyone's story. and we can make no assumption there.
Thank you for speaking to that, because I think it's something that we don't always think of, the draft, very often. But yeah, there are veterans out there who that wasn't a choice that they made. And so I'm really glad you mentioned that.
Not only a choice, but exactly what Jess said. My uncle got spit on. He doesn't even like telling people he served in Vietnam, and he didn't get drafted. He went, but he still came home and got spit on. That is very. I wasn't even alive then. That hurt my heart when I go to him and want to talk to him when I'm doing a project for college or whatever. He doesn't even want to speak to it because it's still so raw in his heart.
And that is going to delay or deny people getting those services because, and who in the world can fault them? If I did my term of service, whether I volunteered or not, and I came home to that, I don't want anything to do with the military, with the VA, with veterans. I don't want nobody to know anything. And you cannot process your trauma with that. You can't let go of that baggage off of you. Unfortunately, all we can do is keep saying, "Hey, we're here and you're worthy. Everyone is worthy and valuable and deserves a seat at our table."
I love that. Is there anything you would say about the positive impact that you've seen from the services that you all provide at Welcome?
Well, positive impact. There are so many.
I know. Where to begin?
Just to throw you some stats, our shelter, because I'm, again, number geek, we have a 60% success rate for our shelter services as a whole of those moving into permanent housing. That's very, very high compared to non-veteran homeless shelters. Our permanent housing team has over 90% success rate in placing people in housing. And that right there is a huge boon to our community. If these folks are in our community, they're working in our community, they're spending time in our community and money in our community, they are giving to our community. As corny as it is, especially when I was in case management, there was no better feeling than being able to shake someone's hand and say, "Welcome home," when you hand them the keys to their car or keys to their house. And, lots of folks chuckle, but it often brings a tear to their eye because it's super corny, right? But it hits people right in their hearts because we can provide a welcome home.
I'm going to start crying now. Thank you. That was just so beautifully said.
Join us, yeah.
Anything you want to add to that?
Use some specifics, and I was going to get all teary-eyed. So Jess handled that very well.
Seeing families be housed. I mean, again,
saving families, like before they get on the street. Like a family of 6, just 6 months ago, they were going to be on the street. So there are so many details.
And that is a bigger thing that I think we can do as Welcome Home with our VA grants and all our grants is be able to provide prevention funds. Most people can only help once that homelessness has hit. We can help if you are imminently at risk. And what that means is you are looking at losing your shelter within 14 days. You have an eviction notice, where you're staying is asking you to leave, maybe you're couch surfing or those kinds of things, you are imminently at risk. We have the capacity to help maybe catch you up on rental arrears or try to mediate those situations where I think most places are unable to help until you are literally homeless.
That is such a helpful resource to know. So for everyone who is providing direct services out there, keep Welcome Home in mind if you're working with somebody who is at imminent risk of homelessness. That's really helpful to know, and is also a veteran, of course. So Veterans Day is right around the corner. And I just wanted to ask you all, as we're wrapping up, what does Veterans Day mean to you all at Welcome Home? And are you all doing anything in particular to commemorate Veterans Day this year?
Our team, our ops team,
we do holidays big.
We just go all out. Obviously, Day is our number one. We will have 2 huge meals that day. We will have games. We will have bingo. We've got guys and gals who want to come down and play, and we have guys and gals who want to take their meals back to their room. We support whatever they want to do, but we like to provide a good, warm family atmosphere to where they can come down and have that camaraderie. Talk to the ops staff. We have board members come in and help out serve. But as Jess said, we celebrate every holiday, even Donut Day. I mean, we
do.
We
Donut
celebrate
Day?
all the holidays.
The important ones. Christmas is my favorite day to work. It should be the most depressing homeless shelter, right? And I think there's a bit of that welcome home difference. Is you walk into our place, you've never seen a shelter like it. If you don't hear laughter, you're not paying attention. If you're not seeing smiles, you're not paying attention. We obviously want to do everything we can to honor those veterans, and maybe you want to partake, maybe you don't. We're still going to feed you right and feed you well, and let you know that you're welcome. For me personally, as a veteran, it's a time where I usually take a few days off around it and try to reconnect with some of my older battle buddies and reflect on some of those experiences, and try to also respectfully and honor those that I have lost.
Yeah. There's no other time that you see the support of your community than around the holidays. It's incredible and so inspiring. I love it. Any final thoughts as we're wrapping up our episode that y'all wanted to be sure to speak to?
Not at all, other than, and I don't know if there are any listeners out there who can help us, but exactly what Jess said earlier, affordable housing. It's like this all over the nation. I get it, but that's where we are.
I have visited every housing authority in our catchment. There's no one that has less than 6 month wait list. Most of them are much higher than that. We may have some risky folks, right? Folks who have evictions, who might not have the greatest income.
Yes. Well, Jess and Michelle, it has been wonderful to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for joining. We really appreciate it. I learned so much, and thanks for coming. And to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. And listeners, happy Veterans Day, everyone. We will see you next month for episode 12 of Momentum for Change, which will be the final episode of season 13. We look forward to seeing you then. Thank you for joining us. This has been a recorded conversation now available in both video and podcast formats. A video recording of this episode is available on the MOCADSV YouTube channel under the Momentum for Change playlist. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel in order to receive new episodes in your YouTube feed. You can also find all of our Momentum for Change episodes available to stream on Spotify or wherever you find your podcasts. Momentum for Change is a podcast produced by MOCADSV with post-production support provided by Tim Stillings and promotion by Adrian Maddox. Again, I am your host, Nora Mosby, and we appreciate you joining us for this episode. Thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you next month.